Well, we are back for another episode of the Chris McPherson Show, and we are rocking and rolling into your black and white of your sporting landscape. No grey opinions here. We're going to get things right underway, heading around the grounds, and to join me around the grounds are none other than the man from the Third Man Up podcast, Brody Burrows. Hello, bro. It's good to have you back.
G'day, Chris. Great to be back, mate.
And, of course, our resident Queenslander, and that is Maroon, spelt with an A, not with an O, J.R. Carter.
Chris, how are you? Brody, good to see you, mate.
You too.
He sounds so disappointed, Brody.
Not at all. No, I'm very glad to be back, boys. It's been a big couple of days travelling over the west, but glad to be back, and always good talking to you boys on when there's plenty of sport flying around.
Well, it certainly is. And JR, let's start with the obvious. Let's talk state of origin. How happy are you? I know you'll be upset that Kalen Ponga's still wearing the one jersey, it looks like, but Daly Cherry Evans is gone, did and should play half, and Kurt Mann will be on the bench, we think.
Yeah, that's sort of where it's looking at this point. Look, that is the end of Daly Cherry Evans' origin career. He spent a long time trying to break into that squad because he had quite a lot of talent ahead of him, and he's had a good run, but was he the right fall guy for what happened? I'm not sure he was. I don't think he's the problem. Admittedly, he didn't turn up, but I'm not sure he was the overarching problem.
Yeah, I don't know that he was the only problem. Ill discipline, lack of possession, and a lot of other things went into it. I mean, I did a bit of a breakdown earlier this week on one of our daily doses talking about the State of Origin team makeups, but at the end of the day, he is the oldest ever man to play State of Origin. It's one of those things, I guess, that you need to have a look at, but can you blame one person for these results, especially when it was so comprehensive?
Yeah, see, I'm not sure. I'm not sure you can. The axe obviously had to swing, but I think again, you're right. He's the eldest person. He's pulled that record straight off Cameron Smith in the last few years, but you've still got Ponga in the side who did absolutely nothing.
Well, that was one of the talking points, was that Reece Walsh wasn't picked. And, Brody, you sit around so many of these sporting spheres. It's hard when you come to these sort of units and, representative teams. I mean, you've just been working with the Socceroos. It's hard to always get these things right. But I think Billy Slater is in a position here where he's damned if he did, damned if he didn't. Because if he goes and throws the baby out with the bathwater and culls his whole spine because they didn't perform, and then the new spine doesn't perform, they'll say that he didn't give him a chance to, succeed. But if he doesn't make changes and they lose again, it's one of those things. Who'd be a coach?
Yeah, exactly right. And look, a big name like Daly, you take him out of your side, and it can send shockwaves, and it's going to work one way or it's going to work the other way, and it could be exactly what Queensland need, or we could see an absolute demolition. And look, it's going to make for an interesting next game. And look, as a neutral supporter, but most neutral supporters are really Queenslanders, let's be honest. Sorry, Chris, but as a neutral supporter, everyone wants a game 3. So fingers crossed it gets there.
Yeah, well, we want game 3 to be alive, JR. It's going to be interesting. The one that I want to see, and this is, I'm kind of a bit torn, is Corey Horsburgh being picked in the squad, the big red, the big fiery red. I know he's got a penalty in him, but it just looked like they needed a bit more grunt and mongrel as well. Tino and Big Mo had a bit of a lone hand in that first game. So you think that might fix a few things if they can roll Big Corey off the bench?
Look, if Corey makes a squad, because he's been picked at 20 at this stage, so he's a long way out from getting in. But yeah, something like a bit of that mongrel, I think, is what's missing right now.
Certainly is. Something that is puzzling for a lot of people, Brody, is Ezra Mam, a couple of games back from suspension for being on drugs and crashing cars, and he's straight back into the Origin squad. Doesn't look like he'll play, but surely that's not sending a great message.
It's not, and unfortunately, we've seen this a little bit before, and it's not just the one code, but we've seen this a lot. A lot of people getting a lot of chances, and it's something that when you look at State of Origin, I mean, that's the peak of NRL. Really, that's what everyone dies to play. It's the most watched games you nearly see all year, or it is. So, look, I think you want to see your best players. At the same time, there's got to be that fine line between bringing people in who are good for the game and bringing people in who are your best players.
Certainly going to be an interesting one. Some controversy in the New South Wales squad with a few of their adjustments. Mitch Barnett out with an ACL. Lindsay Smith, a Penrith player, coming in onto the extended bench, which people have questioned. But I guess we'll wait and see. JR, let's switch tack to something that you love just a little bit more than you love talking about your home state of Queensland. The Formula One, the Canadian Grand Prix this weekend, and then that will roll in nicely, as I'm sure you'll tell us, into the dropping of the 2026 calendar in the lead-up.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we've got Canada this weekend. So no big sort of stories there. Max has managed to avoid his license suspension, so he will race at this point unless he does something on Friday that's just out of control, which being Max he might. Canada's home racer and all-around terrible driver, Lance Stroll, is a 50-50 chance to start. Still carrying that hand injury. So there is actually a chance someone else will be in that car. Hopefully that is actually Valtteri Bottas. So as he is technically signed up as their reserve driver as well. So if we get to see Valtteri this weekend, that could be an all-around win. No Lance and one of the greatest personalities in F1 back. But looking ahead, F1 calendar for next year has dropped. There's been some good consolidation around the way they're traveling. So rounds will be sort of roughly the same time zones for multiple times in a row. So we'll start off with sort of an Asian sort of oceanic setup where Australia's in the lead. Like the first three rounds are exactly the same as this year, really. It's Australia, China, and Japan. Then we head over to the Middle East for Bahrain and Saudi, take a detour into Miami and Canada. And then once we get to Monaco in round 8, we go all the way through to round 16, staying in the European time zone. So we get some really great consistent timings of those races. Coincidentally, 2 Spanish Grand Prix have been announced, and they are labeled as separate rounds, like not one or the other. So it looks like even though Madrid hasn't been officially confirmed as an FIA eligible circuit, it looks like they're expecting it to be. So they will do 2 Grand Prix there. And that's great news for the likes of Fernando Alonso, who will be driving an Adrian Newey car next year. So he's got 2 cracks at his home race. So that's great to see. Then we head back into Asia with Azerbaijan, Singapore, and then we do another long stint in the Americas. So going from the US all the way through to the Austin Grand Prix all the way through to Vegas. Then finally the Middle East rounds again.
And bro, this has got to be a good thing, right? Like the F1's been critiqued and criticised for a long time about their travel schedule and ping-ponging around the globe. Obviously, we know that motorsports isn't exactly contingent to their carbon footprint, but making some relatively medium efforts, realistically, when you think about how much stuff gets shipped around, is a positive sign from F1, just aligning their calendar, and it makes it a bit easy for fans too.
Makes it easy for fans, makes it easy for teams, and hopefully it makes a better spectacle overall. I mean, you think of these cars and they're so light, they're so obviously aerodynamic, and the amount of science goes into these cars and trying to take them all across the world and keep them in one. And hopefully that means more cars actually stay on the track as well, not being shipped around. So I think it's a win for everyone.
Certainly, 24 races though, JR, is there's always questions about the length and breadth of the season. Is 24 the right number still, or where do you think this ends up landing? Do we end up with a reduction or a ratification at some point?
Look, I really don't know. See, 24 means like technically you've got a race every other weekend. Like while they consolidate it right down, like and quite often we have like a lot of triple headers. There's quite a few this season coming. It means we are getting 6 months of racing of the year, like effectively. So like it's a long season, but at the same time, like it's giving the fans like what they want. And a lot of these events have been incredibly successful as well. Like a lot of these new tracks, like the Vegas event itself, while it's like, as far as I'm aware, like the actual trackside conditions viewing aren't that great, like unless you're in like a very ritzy hotel. But the actual event itself is a massive success. So like in bringing more, and we do have the 3 different US Grand Prix at the moment, but that's sort of, when you think about it, that's the sort of same sort of population mass as what you have in Europe. So like if we're getting more fans, we probably need to have more races like that.
I think we're getting a bit more cut through there. And Brody, it's unsurprising that there's a US push. We're seeing Cadillac coming in next year as well. So I think they're getting close to that balance, but only time will tell.
Yeah, as soon as the US can get into the market, they're going to dive in there, aren't they, and get their fingers on it. So I think that's going to be great for F1, though, seeing Cadillac come in. Obviously, that American market is huge. And, the more events that we can sort of get and more eyes on it, it's going to make a better product.
And certainly, on top of that, next year, we also get Ford back next year as well, like in the Red Bull cars.
We certainly do. So lots of American trends. There'll be red, white, and blue. The stars and stripes will be all over the grid, and we can't wait to see. We know Tommy Hilfiger is going to be on the grid, and bro, so you certainly strike me as a Tommy Hilfiger man. What's going on?
Yeah, mate, definitely. He actually sponsors our farm wear, believe it or not, Tommy. But as someone who's got no fashion sense, you're talking to the wrong person here, Chris.
I don't think any fashion brands are going to be approaching the three of us anytime soon. I mean that with all deference, gents. But JR, I know that the end of F1 normally means you sneaking into the shadows until there's any mentions of Mitch, Sean, or Jeff Marsh, and I can reliably ensure that there will be none of those today, so you can go and rest up.
No worries. I'll talk to you boys very soon.
Rhodes, let's keep rolling here through a couple of other things before we get into the meat and potatoes of the show. The NBA Finals, we know they're in full swing. We had Ben Dunn on last week to preview them. But I just want to talk about the Indiana Pacers. They are the new comeback kings. They were down by 9 with next to no time on the clock in game one, managed to come back and seal it. Tyrese Halliburton is absolutely killing it. But someone did the mathematical permutations of a couple of the comebacks they had in their games against Milwaukee and then in a couple of their other series. And basically, the odds of them coming back in each of those games is equivalent to the odds of any average human being struck by lightning.
Yeah, look, as a absolute diehard Knicks fan, I really want to skip this segment, Chris. But look, Tyrese Halliburton, you've got to give him credit. Sometimes looks disinterested. Last 5 minutes, he comes in and just turns it on. Look, every OKC fan, when he got the ball, they were just saying double team Tyrese, double team him here. And look, as soon as he let that shot go, as a Knicks fan, as someone who's just seen him destroy us, although he didn't get player of the finals, I thought that was hilarious when he did go up to get that and it went to Siakam. You just knew it was going in. Whether it was going to bounce off the rim and go 5 feet in the air like it did against the Knicks, it was always going in. And I think it's fantastic. It really shakes up this series with OKC coming in as hot favourites for it. But Pacers, that is such a good, even team. Yes, Halliburton has had these big moments, but they're such an even team. They're getting so much off their bench and from their role players.
Yeah, they certainly are. It's they've been such a deep squad, so consistent. And I think that's the thing, the difference between the best performances of their best players and their 8th and 9th men has been so deep, and it's why they probably challenge your Knicks as much as I know you won't want to dwell on it, is just that deeper roster. It's somewhere where OKC is strong. I still can't write off OKC at this point. I still can't lean towards Indiana as much as it'd be a wonderful story. Despite those numbers, as I was saying, I think it's 1 in 12,500 your chance of getting hit by lightning in a year. It's 1 in 50,000 or something like that of getting attacked by a bear, and then it's 1 in 250,000 the odds of them winning these games the way they have. So 5 bear attacks, you might have preferred that to losing in 7.
Yeah, I'll definitely take the Bears on any day, mate. 5 Bears onto 1 Brody Burrows. Let's see how we go. But look, you really got credit, but I think we're really seeing this NBA final series more so than any is the ability for teams to win away. Obviously, that home court advantage has always been so big, but this year we're seeing teams win away a lot and really shake things up. So I'm tipping OKC to get one back and then regain the home court advantage. But look, anything can happen as we've seen so far.
Well, we know one thing, it's going to go to at least 5. We want a 7. We love a 7. That'd be great, especially as a neutral. Like we talked about the State of Origin, you always wanted to get down to a decider. That's where the enthralling emotion is. So we will wait and see. Speaking of enthralling emotion, the golf, it gets people on the edge of their seat. I love getting up early in the morning and catching what's happening in the majors. And the US Open returns to Oakmont. Now, some Aussie fans might say, oh, Oakmont, that course rings a bell. Oakmont is this course. It is an absolute nightmare. It's a monster. The rough sits, 4 inches long right next to some pristine fairways. But this is the one you'll remember. Aaron Baddeley, I think 2007. He was the leader after the 3rd round. He was 212. He's 2 over par, which is a good score through 3 rounds there. He's walking the fairways the next day with Tiger Woods, who's his idol at that time. He's aspiring to become, the next big thing in golf. He 3-putts the first hole, shoots 80 and ties for 13. It's that sort of course where one day, 1 or 2 off holes, and all of a sudden you just fall apart. It's a thing of nightmares, which if it's a thing of nightmares for golf players, bros, that means it's a thing of enthralling viewing for golf fans.
Absolutely. As someone who regularly does those sort of 3 putts on a very, very easy course, that's definitely not something I want to be doing. But it does make the best spectacle when you are watching these, these really tough courses. And at the same time, you so often see with the tough courses, yes, you'll see a 100 to 200 ranked player. They'll come in and they'll do well for that 2 or 3 days, but you often see it's where the cream rises to the crop. They might not have the best day, but they'll have, they'll be consistently top 10 every single day, and they're usually the winners on these courses. So, look, it's going to be an enthralling watch, like you said, but I think it's, who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting one. It's always even more interesting now because these majors bring back the live golfers against the PGA players, so there's a bit of angst there. The last two times it's been at Oakmont, 2007, that one we talked about, Angel Cabrera came from the clouds and won it with a 5 over score, which, we see some of these golf tournaments where people win it at 17, 18, 19 under. 2016, the ninth time the US Open had been held at Oakmont, and it was Dustin Johnson. He's my man in this one. I love DJ, so I'm going to be keeping an eye on him. He won it. He shot 276, which is 4 under for the course, so he might be a sneaky, but we'll stay tuned in the late hours and the early wee hours. Just another bit of sport for us to watch, Broad. So another major. These are always ones to get the bleary eyes going.
Yeah, absolutely. It never stops around the world. I'm still trying to wake up from that Roland Garros final the other night.
Hey, there's morning. We've got the Club World Cup. We'll talk to Lachie Avil about that a little bit later on. Something that we did have in our time zone was Jai Opetaia taking his 28th straight win. And he was seen afterwards shouting, "Is there anyone else?" Which, anyone who's watched that movie Troy and Achilles shouted that, he's shouting and bellowing and grinning as he walked, "Is there anyone else?" He'll now get to find out. He won, that IBF cruiserweight. He's now defended the cruiserweight title, but it was a brutal right hook that got it done for him. Against Squayo, I think it's pronounced. I'm not great on the pronunciations all the time. A man who, took up boxing after watching Cinderella Man and pursued it, but there was no Hollywood upset on the Gold Coast this week.
No, there wasn't. Broke his jaw too. I think it's now come out too that he's done. And look, he's so powerful, especially for that division. And sounds like he's going to make his way to the Jake Paul undercard and maybe kill someone out too. And he said straight away that he believes he's the best cruiserweight. And I mean, 28 and zip, it's hard to, really put a case against it. He's so powerful for this division. He looks great, rarely gets tagged, but when he does, he comes back stronger in that typical Australian fashion with that, that counter punching more so than the technical side we see from a lot of Americans.
Yeah, well, it looks like he wants to call out the Mexican Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez, who we know is fighting, as you said, on that co-main in Jake Paul's latest outing in about 3 weeks' time. But look, it was a bit of a weird day in all for Australian boxing. It was great, obviously, for Opetaia's win. We did see Justice Hooney have a controversial 10 count in his fight. But the good news was Sam Goodman announced to fight the WBA featherweight champion Nick Ball. So that's something to look forward to. It's always good to have something to look forward to in boxing.
Yeah, it is. Sam Goodman, we know, obviously such a tough last 12 months for him. I know he's got a huge fan base behind him, the Mad Bunch they call themselves. So fingers crossed Sam Goodman can get this one under his belt, get a win, and then go on to bigger and better things again.
It sounds like it is certainly going to be exciting to watch what Goodman can do from here. And obviously we'll be keeping an eye as well on Jai Opetaia as he looks to unite some more of those belts in his division. But Broads, we might hit the oranges, get a bit of water, refresh, and might loop back to you a little bit later in the show to catch up on a bit of Aussie rules.
Sounds good, mate.
Well, it's now time to get into the round ball action. Of course, when we talk round ball, we would have no one else other than Round Ball Australia's own Lachlan Avil on the show. And Lachie, good to have you back as always.
Yes, good morning to you, Chris. We've thrown things around a little bit for obvious reasons this week, but it's good to be back.
Well, it is an obvious reason, and it's an obvious reason of celebration after the Socceroos sealed their progression through to the North American World Cup in 2026. Lachie, a first win against Saudi Arabia in World Cup qualifying in Saudi Arabia was a nice way to seal it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really special morning. A 2-1 win for the Socceroos against a Saudi Arabian team that gave them a fair shake-up, especially in the first half. Held most of the balls. Socceroos were made to do a lot of the game without it. But just some really nice moments. Mitch Duke is the hero that comes out of this one with a goal and an assist, especially for a player that has probably not got the respect he deserves in Australian football circles. And then Matt Ryan on his 100th cap, a penalty save to hold the advantage late in the game is something really, really special as well. So obviously at kind of both of those points in the game, the qualification was still relatively secure, definitely by the time that Matt Ryan had to face that penalty. But to come off such a crucial win and such a drought-breaking win, as you say, the first time beating Saudi Arabia away from home in a competitive fixture is really something special and definitely worth celebrating. It
certainly is, and we head through to another World Cup, as I touched on. Obviously, for a number of other sides, that does mean that they will head into that next stage. But it is now confirmed after all the games wrapped up in the Asian qualifying that not only are the Socceroos going through, there will be Iran, Uzbekistan, South Korea, Jordan and Japan. We knew a few of those were wrapped up. While for the fourth round qualifying, the UAE, Qatar, Iraq, Oman, Saudi Arabia and Indonesia. That's a very West Asian heavy fourth round.
It is, yeah. I mean, it's kind of good to get one back over the West Asian kind of conglomerate. Obviously, they have a fairly decent leg up in club football land, so it's good on the national side that obviously the likes of Japan, Korea and Australia are always looking pretty good when it comes to being up the top in the pointy end in World Cup qualifications. So we've kind of pulled our weight there, and it's going to be a fascinating fourth round as well. Obviously, we were talking a little bit earlier before record just how convoluted this system can be. It's quite crazy that we have now secured I'm talking in terms of Asian football, we've secured our fourth round participants as several European nations are yet to commence their first game of World Cup qualification for UEFA. So it definitely works a little bit differently over in this side of the world, but very thankful that the Socceroos have qualified automatically, which is a rarity, and we don't have to go through some of these extra phases.
It certainly is good. And obviously for those who aren't as au fait, the fourth round will take place in October. Two groups of three, if memory serves, the top team for each goes through, but then the next two go through to the fifth round of qualifying. So it is the reason with the structures that this is wrapped up so early for us. But as you talked on Mitch Duke and Matt Ryan, the headlines for the Australians, it's been a momentous run under Tony Popovic. We were just talking about this on the Round Ball Australia wrap around the Socceroos qualification and the Asian qualifiers. And I guess 8 games undefeated under Popper now is, I think you quoted before saying that it will continue until the first game of the World Cup now in terms of competitive games. But I'd like to hope that it continues a little bit beyond that, this undefeated run.
Well, look, winning games of football is always great, but you also, especially when you're a team like Australia and you have to be really considerate with the matches that you were arranging going into a World Cup, arranging some games against some really quality nations where maybe you do lose a game or two, but you learn a lot of lessons, it can have just as much value, right? So obviously when it comes to competitive games of football, winning is kind of what matters, obviously. But when we're considering the friendlies that we do play and trying to provide a little bit of structure to the development of the team, it can be a little bit of a different story. And, we talked about this in terms of the way Popovic has set up his team for the last 2 games was, to sit off the ball and have less possession. And it's not necessarily an attractive brand of football, but with the context of where we were in the group, especially the context that he was given when he was given the job of just 1 point from the first 2 games, it became just about qualifying for a World Cup. And now that weight is off his shoulders, and hopefully the lines of experimentation will open up, and he'll be able to paint a picture of what he wants his World Cup team to look like. And now he has about 12 months to work towards that goal.
He certainly does, Lockie. It's a great piece to take away, and I guess we'll wait and see what sort of games Popper, the Socceroos can organise in the interim. But it's a positive place to be, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We qualified for a World Cup. It's a special day in Australian football. It's only the 7th time we've ever done so on the men's side of things. And, ever since that fateful day in 2005, when John Aloisi scored that penalty, we're a very privileged position to say that Australia has never missed qualification for an official men's or women's World Cup, which is a really, really cool thing. So anyone who's listening to this, I know you get a lot of viewers from other codes. Any doubters that say Australia isn't a football nation might want to check the record books.
Well, let's move to women's football now, Lockie, and the reward has come for Emily Husband after a wonderful season with the Central Coast Mariners, named as a full-time assistant coach for the Matildas.
Yeah, really cool, I think. She had a really heartfelt message for Mariner supporters as the club announced that she was leaving. Of course, as we see on the screen now, she was involved with the latest camp for the Matildas, the final one under Tommy Samani, and it was pretty cool seeing her deliver match day instructions to Izzy Gomez, one of her players, of course, at the Mariners, who scored goals in the semi-final and grand final to take them to championship glory. So she's been highly thought of in the women's game for a little while now, and obviously this was seen as a little bit of a test run, not necessarily with Joe Montemuro himself, but in the national team setup. And clearly all ticks, signified a positive experience, and she's there for good. And really, wonderful step up for her. She's, brought this Mariners team to life. Can't forget that they've only been back in the league for 2 seasons and they're already champions. So, yeah, she's done a tremendous job and well deserved.
It certainly has. And when you look at what her background was coming into that Mariners job, she didn't have head coaching experience at that level realistically. So in that short-term journey of bringing them back in, starting from scratch, building a squad, winning a title, and now progressing, it's somewhat of a whirlwind journey. Undoubtedly, there's a lot of hard hours and years that have gone into the lead-up, but it's quite a phenomenal, trajectory that she's on.
Yeah, and she's been all over the world, right? Obviously, she grew up in England. She played college football in the United States and then somehow found her way in Australia when she was appointed as assistant manager of Canberra United, and then got a job in the state leagues and then back up to the Central Coast Mariners when they were brought back in. So it's, in terms of her coaching journey, you're right. It's only been 2 years in terms of a head job at professional level. So her rise has been really quick, and to get a step up to a national team gig is, as I said, just rewards for her effort.
It certainly is, and we wish her the best under the new, regime there at the Matildas alongside Joe Montemuro. We're really excited to see what can come of it. Let's take a bit of a pivot, Lockie, and let's head to Europe. And 40-year-old men winning titles. Cristiano Ronaldo, another little bit of silverware. The local derby, if you will, up against Spain in the final, and they took it all the way and got home on penalties. Ronaldo scoring in the second half of that one. So it's phenomenal to think that he's still performing at the top level of the game, which realistically this sort of competition is at 40 years of age.
It is quite remarkable, right? And as much as that 2022 World Cup will always be the ultimate trump card in the Messi versus Ronaldo debate, the fact that he's now got a European Championship and 2 Nations League to his name is quite something. I know everyone probably has their own opinion about how significant this trophy is, but the fact is you're playing some really high quality football against the best teams of the world, and then it is a knockout competition when you get to the Final Four. So you're playing the best in Europe and you're winning major trophies. Even the phrase major trophy is probably debatable, but to see someone like Ronaldo, who's obviously ticked over 40 now and still doing it, obviously, all the conversation going into the last World Cup was probably that it was going to be he and Messi's last, but they just keep going. And there's no reason to expect why they both won't be there come 2026 in North America for the World Cup. So it's exciting. Maybe we are going to get one last duel between the two giants of our generation.
Yeah, maybe we'll get that one last chance, as you say. It'd be phenomenal to see if we could get that next year at the World Cup, and you wouldn't rule it out. But look, whether you call it major or not, it's a continental title, right? Like this is something that not every man and his dog is playing for. So, some of the best countries in the world competing, as we saw Portugal and Spain. Congratulations to Portugal for taking it out. But fingers crossed we can see them as we head to 2026. Next up, we want to talk about the FIFA Club World Cup, Lockie. It's just around the corner. It all gets underway next week. We're talking about it off air before. I'm most excited to see this massive battle of the minnows versus the major stars. It comes on the first real day of games when we've got Auckland City FC taking on Bayern Munich. I believe the difference in wage bill is somewhere in the realm of just over $1 billion.
Yeah, it's quite crazy that this is a competition that can give rise to these kinds of fixtures. Obviously, we have what was previously the Club World Cup. It's now known as the Intercontinental Cup or something like that, where the winners of all these Champions League gets to face each other at the end of the year. But to have a proper tournament where the likes of an Auckland City going against a Bayern Munich, which are the two teams that you were referring to, is quite cool. And for Auckland City, we could go into the changes in oceanic football that are happening over the last 6 months or so, but this will probably be their only chance to qualify for this tournament. So as much as they've been dominating, continental football in Oceania, they probably won't get a chance to qualify for this Club World Cup again. So it's going to be a unique experience for them. And then we have the likes of the Ura Red Diamonds, Al Hilal, and these other Asian teams as well that have booked their ticket to go to this Club World Cup, and they get to take on the likes of some of these European heavyweights and obviously to clubs from around the world. That's the whole point. But from a European perspective, it's clear that this is a fixture congestion issue, and the fact that these players have come off very grueling seasons where they're expected to play 40 to 50 games for their club, including cup competitions. And if you go in Europe, then obviously there's more. And then a lot of them have gone away on international break, and then it's straight into camp for these Club World Cups. So I understand from the European perspective how this can look like a burden, but I really do believe that for the rest of the world, this is a really cool opportunity. And for us in Australia, the time zones, at least for the back end of the day, aren't terrible. We'll get a 8 a.m. and an 11 a.m. fixture on the east coast of Australia. So I'm looking forward to being able to wake up and watch some of the best football teams in the world do action. And it's going to be really cool. And just to have these kind of unique clashes that we haven't really seen before, I'm excited for it, for one.
Yeah, I'm certainly excited. At the end of the day, we always use the line, more sports, never enough, Lockie. And interestingly, though, you did a bit of a video piece around, continental football qualifying places recently for Round Ball Australia, and you touched on the key, I guess, for our region, blemish on this tournament is the fact that there's two teams that, no matter what they do, no matter how well they do, can't qualify for this tournament.
Yeah, Auckland FC and Wellington Phoenix, of course, they're the two professional football teams in New Zealand, and they both play in the A-League. And due to the contradiction of playing in a domestic league that is considered as an AFC league in Asia, but being oceanic teams, they are ineligible for both the Asian Champions League and the Oceanic Champions League. So they're now one of a handful of teams in the world that have no path towards this FIFA Club World Cup. And when we talk about the principles of football and open pyramids, and I'm very well aware there are a number of contradictions in this part of the world in terms of open pyramids, but we should all be striving for a point where professional football clubs at all scale, and probably some semi-pro ones before that, lower down on the pyramid, have something to strive for. However unlikely that may be, the path for promotions and Champions League and qualification for this tournament exists. So from my understanding, there's communication going on, somehow trying to rectify this issue in this space. But we'll have to wait and see what comes of it, because obviously FIFA don't like, first of all, teams playing in countries that aren't their own. And that was a big turning point when the A-League, came into existence. And the fact that we now have teams playing across confederations, and the fact that we have Australian teams who have submitted expressions of interest in this new Oceanic Pro League just causes a number of issues. But that is a league that is backed by Infantino and FIFA. So hopefully, some kind of compromise can be made.
Yeah, fingers crossed. But one thing is for sure, no Australian teams in the competition, but there are a few Australian representatives, and Ali Reza Fagani, we know how well he's done from a refereeing point of view. We've also got Anton Shentinen and Ashley Beecham as assistant referees, and Sean Evans as a VAR. So, look, we don't often shout out the match officials, but hey, we'll take any representation we can get on the world stage.
Yeah, absolutely. A few refs. It has been rumoured that Nestori Irinkunda is going to be in the squad for Bayern Munich, which is exciting as well. Obviously, he's had his loan spell out in Switzerland and seemed to have done an all right job. So he's going to have to prove himself if he wants to be a part of any Bayern Munich first team plans moving forward. So that, and obviously Auckland City, are some exciting stories to watch as well.
Yeah, they certainly are. And we'll keep up to date. And as it progresses all the way through to a final on July the 14th, I think, our time, which feels like it's an absolute lifetime away. But it's going to do a good job of just filling that void of, no football after the internationals and a few other things wrap up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something extra to get us through the off season. I know personally for you and me, eyes will be turning towards the state leagues in a little more detail as well. But as long as we've got those morning games to keep us up, get us to the evening when the NPL comes on, it'll be good fun.
Exactly right. NPL, a bit of Australia Cup, it'll all be happening. It just means we've got 12 months of football basically as we build towards next season. Before we go, speaking of football and people looking forward to new things, our man Ange Postecoglou wins everything in his second season, and he did talk on that third season, and that's when the big storylines come, but sometimes they kill off the title character, and it's exactly what Tottenham have done.
Yeah, he's got the axe, didn't he? Ange Postecoglou, Daniel Levy, absolutely ruthless. This is such a bewildering decision to me. I wrote after the Europa League final for Round Ball Australia that I wrote kind of about the notion of being Spursy and what that actually means, and not just failing to achieve good things, but almost the ridiculous levels of self-sabotage that puts themselves in that position. And to be so close. Obviously, they've won the Europa League, but to be within touching distance of something so special and going forward with all this positive energy, they've broken the chain, they've broken the wheel of the cycle of just pain and resistance to good things. And the Ange Postecoglou is the reason why they've done that. And to now say we don't even want to give you a chance to see what this new world looks like, it's staggering to me, Chris. And he'll land on his feet. That's the funny thing. Ange's reputation is completely unaffected by this decision. Everyone is looking and pointing the finger at Daniel Levy. No one is really looking at Ange Postecoglou in a negative light at the moment. He's had all these messages from players come out in the social sphere, and we're hearing rumors of a bunch of clubs and even some national teams throwing themselves at him. And it's like, well, he's probably the only manager apart from Mauricio Pochettino who's gone to that club and left it with an enhanced reputation. So look, that it's just a staggering decision, but hopefully Ange has got his next thing lined up. I'm sure he'll do well wherever he goes.
Yeah, undoubtedly will. It'll be interesting to see. I certainly don't know that I'd really want to be Thomas Frank, who's rumoured to be the replacement there. But it's interesting, some of the rumours, Italy and Scotland, two of the national teams that have been rumoured for Ange. As you said, I don't think he's going to be short of offers. The way the players have reflected, he's actually come out of this looking even better than he did breaking a trophy drought somehow, which I find phenomenal. But that's Ange for you. Like, I just think he's one of those likeable characters. The players obviously loved him, and there's been an outpouring of emotion both from fans and players. And yeah, at the end of the day, let's see if Daniel Levy can is someone else, whether it's Thomas Frank or otherwise, and see what sort of consistency they can get for the next few years, and if they can make any real dent in the domestic leagues or Europe.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm just personally happy that I can go back to just despising Tottenham Hotspur Football Club again. I have no conflict whatsoever. This has only revved me up even more, and I can return to my pure Arsenal hatred of that club.
Yeah, it'll be interesting though. I know in the Round Ball Australia chat today, there's a few suggestions that Ange might make the journey over to Italy, maybe win some trophies there in his second year, and then the World Cup. I don't know if that'd count quite for a second year. That'd still be his first year, wouldn't it?
It depends if he signs before June 30th or not, right?
Not June 28th. That's year one done. Wins a World Cup, then goes back to Club World, and someone suggested Man City. I'd be happy with that. So you might have to then put aside your dislike for another English club for a little bit.
I don't dislike Man City that much. I dislike the ownership behind it, but the football club itself in isolation is a nice story, and we know what the City Football Group think of Ange Postecoglou. It's a pretty high consideration. So that seems like a match made in heaven for me. Ange has always been somewhere where when he goes to clubs that have title potential, he extracts those titles out of them, and Manchester City is definitely a club with those kind of resources. So it would make a lot of sense to me.
I say this is a very, disingenuous Manchester City fan right now, but as long as it's not that he's leading us to a championship trophy, we'll be okay.
Yeah, well, you never know. Maybe he just needs to allow that 12 months for Man City to get promoted again back into the Premier League, and then he can take over.
Yeah, we'll wait and see. In the meantime, we'll wait and see what Mr. Levy does with not only all the Tottenham fans baying for his blood, but also a whole country in Australia. So, look, it's never a dull moment in the football landscape. Lots to keep going with, Lockie, as we've touched on, and we look forward to those next stages. And as always, everyone can keep up to date with all of the minutiae of the in-between of our headline dealing here at Round Ball Australia, which, I'm rocking the colours, mate. It's looking good.
I'm impressed. Yeah, you look very nice. Cheers, Chris. Good to talk.
We move on from the round ball to the red clay. The French Open has wrapped up, and as we did for so much of the French Open with our French Open Daily Dose, as we call on our tennis guru, Montegan from the First Serve. Christian, been seeing a lot of each other lately.
We have over the past couple of weeks, been some good discussions. Our predictions haven't been the best in hindsight, looking back on the winners of the French Open. But yeah, keen to talk a bit more about it because, a lot happened during both those singles finals.
Certainly did. I think I said Carlos in 5, but anyway, speaking of, the men's winner was Carlos Alcaraz. You stayed up till the very early hours. I saw a stat today that showed that Alcaraz at one point in the fourth set was 41 points away from a title as the closest he could get at that point, while at the same time Jannik Sinner was 1 point away when he had that triple championship point. That was a phenomenal comeback. It's been suggested this is one of the best Grand Slam matches and Grand Slam finals of all time.
it was certainly the best Grand Slam final in terms of the French Open, that's for sure. It surpassed the previous record for the longest match. Sinner Alcaraz went 5 hours and 29 minutes. It was just absolutely insane. Just the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs, even from that first service game where Sinner had to hold, but it was only after 12 minutes, right? It was about 10 deuces that, eventually Sinner got over the line. You're thinking, oh, wow, we're going to be in for a long night here. And that was sort of the case until sort of midway through the third set, right? I mean, Sinner was up 2 sets in a break. You thought, okay, might run away with this in straight sets, surprisingly. But to Alcaraz's credit, he's just got that mental fight, that mental fortitude that you just can't count him out. Down 3 championship points, love 40 on his serve. I mean, you can forgive any player for sort of for giving in and sort of, just throwing in the towel, I guess, essentially saying, okay, Sinner's too good. He's played exceptionally well these past fortnight. But no, Alcaraz hung in there, played some really smart shots. Yes, probably a couple of mistakes off the Sinner racket, but you can't fault Alcaraz's fight. Like, to be in that position to dig yourself out, and then to win another 2 sets after that, it's just extraordinary. And it was just, so many, I guess, moments in the match where it could have gone either way. I mean, Alcaraz, don't forget, was actually serving for the match in the 5th set, and Sinner broke him, right? So that was another up and down. So, I just think in the end, that tie break, when Alcaraz won those first 7 points, that was basically it. Really didn't really see another extraordinary comeback from there. But I mean, both players should be extremely proud, including Sinner. I know this one's going to be tough to take for him. 3 championship points. He wouldn't sleep well at night for the past week, I'd say. Sleeping on, what could I have done better? Just looking back on it, reflecting. But I'm sure he's got a great team around him. The likes of Darren Cahill. His family as well. He mentioned post-match, they're the close ones that are going to be around him, supporting him through this difficult time, because it's not easy rallying back from such a devastating result. Like, in your back of your mind, you're thinking, I should have been a Roland Garros champion. Yeah, I'm not. I was so close yet so far. But like, both players, just the tennis in general was just outstanding from start to finish. Some of the shot making, coming to the net, the volleying. I mean, this day and age, I guess the older generation say, this modern day, it's not as entertaining because players don't come to the net. But these 2 players, like, it's anything but, right? I mean, they just throw in such good variety of tennis, just so many good shot making, slices, drop shots, you name it. It's just fantastic to watch. So in terms of an overall spectacle, that's why I guess people are placing it as one of the best Grand Slam finals of all time.
Yeah, it certainly is right up there. And I think the thing that, some people were talking about, that comeback once he held off those 3 championship points, it was still a breakdown after that. Like, Sinner was still going to have an opportunity to match. So to come from such a deficit and come back, absolutely phenomenal. Hats off. And, it is, that rivalry now starting to build. We know it's been there, it's been up and about, but to see it on the greatest stage, if this is what we got now at the age that the 2 are, I can't wait to see what's going to come over the next 5, 10, 12 years between these 2. This is going to be a great legacy, and it's going to be up to, others to break into this, that category to come up against them. So I can't wait. It's going to be phenomenal.
I just want them to play in every single Grand Slam final, to be quite honest. Like, if we get that, then we're happy, right? I mean, looking at the rest of the field, if you're one of those players looking at this final, it's like how do I get a shot here? How do I get in to play one of these guys? Because you can only see from here, it's Sinner Alcaraz most of the time. I know things change, you get injuries, this and that. Like, there's going to be down periods, especially Alcaraz. We know his consistency has been a big question mark since the start of his career. But you look at someone like Zverev, it's like he's had so many chances to win one. And you look at this game, just the highest of quality, you're thinking, has my window closed? Is that it for me? I wouldn't be surprised if they're saying that in the back of their mind. So it's just, I've lost for words, just phenomenal, the tennis they produced, honestly.
Yeah, it certainly is. I don't think there are words for it. Speaking of matches, look, no disrespect to these 2 ladies, but it wasn't quite on the same standard, but it was still an enthralling final, the women's final. Coco Gauff had to come back from a set down, and you and I had talked about it. We thought that Sabalenka would blow her off. Coco Gauff managed to stay with her, and she took it 6-7, 6-2, 6-4 to claim herself another title. And again, at just 21 years of age, she turned 21 in March. So phenomenal to think the future that she has ahead of her as she starts to make these next little breakthroughs. But I think at different points question whether she would be able to take that leap against the likes of Sabalenka, but to do so on clay, she's positioned herself really well for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, let's not forget she was down 4-1 40 love on the Sabalenka serve, and you're thinking, okay, Saba's got this first set wrapped up easily, but no, again, like Alcaraz, just fighting back, just not giving up, not giving Sabalenka an inch. Even in that tiebreak, she had some chances to close in and potentially snatch that first set out of all odds. So yeah, from there, it could have been easy for her to sort of fold, especially of a player Sabalenka's quality, and we know her form heading into Roland Garros. She was probably, obviously, I guess the clear favourite, especially after she beat Iga, right, so convincingly. And I think a bit of both. Coco played some really good tennis, I thought, but on the same token, I thought Sabalenka probably played some of her worst tennis. 70 unforced errors, that's just sort of unheard of in a three-set tennis, really. A lot of mistakes off Sabalenka's racket, just trying to go for the lines too often, not playing the safe shot when she should have. But I was sort of a bit disappointed post-match, taking the gloss of Coco's win, I guess, in terms of Sabalenka's comments in the press conference, basically, mentioning the conditions multiple times. I mean, yes, it was windy. The conditions weren't suitable to Sabalenka, who loves to hit through the ball, loves the fast-paced conditions. Maybe the roof being closed would have helped her a bit. And those swirly, that weather, the swirly, windy weather, really helped Coco. Get a foothold of the match, get in control of some of the rallies, and that's obviously why she ended up winning that game and coming back. So, look, I understand Sabalenka's frustration. Yes, she has a point. She played badly. She admitted that as well. But she then came out and said that Iga would have beaten Coco in the final had Iga beaten Sabalenka in the semis. I mean, look, you can think that personally, but to say it out loud in public, I just think it leaves a bit of a bad look. To be honest, I think you agree as well, Chris. Then she also mentioned that Coco didn't play incredible. It was more her unforced errors. And like I said before, I agree with that. But just give Coco the victory, show a bit of grace, which she usually does. We love Sabalenka. She's a great personality, but I think sometimes the emotions tend to get the better of her.
Yeah, I think so. And we talked about on that Daily Dose when we pulled apart the finals that getting inside Arena's head was the thing, and that obviously looked to be the case. It's where the errors come from for her, and then it's pretty ordinary sportsmanship from someone who's supposed to be by rank and standing in the game, one of the leaders of the women's game. So you hope she's had a chance to reflect on that, and she's still got a piece there at the top of the game at 27 years of age to, I guess, set a standard for those that are coming behind her, and it'll be interesting to see. But let's move on to just talking about some of the storylines that have come out, and the movers and shakers, both up and down. Probably the first one I want to talk about is that lady that you mentioned before, is Iga Swiatek. She's dropped down to 7 in the rankings. Really reflects the fact that she's now 12 months without a title.
Yeah, so given that, it's not surprising, right? Like you mentioned, last time she won a title was Roland Garros last year, and she hasn't even made a final since, which is pretty shocking. It just goes to show her form has really dipped, and to see her number 7, it's just a surprise because you don't normally tend to associate Iga in that position, right? It's usually in the top 2 or 3 in the world, right? That's what we've been best known for in terms of Iga. So a bit of a surprise there, but I mean, heading into Wimbledon, it's by far her least favoured surface, the grass, her least favourite Grand Slam. From memory, I'm trying to think where she made it last year. I think the 3rd or 4th round she got knocked out. So potentially there's some points there for her to rack up, which is, I guess, the positive for her. But yeah, at the same time, like I said, grass just isn't suited to her game style. She's more of a clay courter, and that's why this Roland Garros, letting that slip away, it's no surprise that she's dropped in the rankings.
Yeah, it's probably not. And again, there's a few movers and shakers. Another one that won't surprise is obviously Lois Poisson. Rocketed up the rankings. Unfortunately for her, it does come after the close off of the automatic entries for Wimbledon, because she's rocketed up to, I think it's somewhere in the 60s, maybe 65th in the rankings.
65.
Yep. There's Isla Tomljanovic, which would have been a walk-up start into Wimbledon if the cutoff had been a little bit later. So a little bit of a shame for her, but what happens there?
Yeah, I mean, she started the tournament 361. I mean, 12 months ago, she had an ACL injury, right? I mean, just a remarkable story, making it all the way to the semi-final. Such a Cinderella story in some ways. So to see her there is great. But yeah, as you mentioned, it's just a shame that she didn't quite make the cutoff for Wimbledon. And look, we've got to see, right, whether these other surfaces, grass and the hard courts, whether she can maintain that same level, right? Because before Roland Garros, she was losing to players similar rank to her, like in the 200, 300. That's why it was such a shock to beat the likes of Andreeva and Pegula these top 10 players, which, caught obviously everyone by surprise, right? Even the French locals. So, just great to see that story, come out. We love those, sort of players, making a breakthrough, and the prize money as well. She earned, I think, nearly $1 million in prize money before the tournament, earned only 150K. So, I mean, that's life-changing money in terms of, going on the tour, investing in the coaching team, other things like that around you. It can really develop and enhance your career. So good on her and all the best.
Yeah, certainly some good stories there. A couple of others I want to touch on just before we move on, and we won't go too in depth. But Hayley Baptiste moves up to the cusp of the top 50. We saw her run as well, and then obviously two other names: Leolia Jean-Jean from France and Victoria Mboko move inside the top 100 for the two of them as well. So they were two good stories that came out alongside those. So some names to watch potentially as it all settles out. We've still got a good number of Aussies inside the top 100 for the women's. On the men's side, Taylor Fritz is probably one that's, ruining a little bit. I think because he's made the round of 16 in Stuttgart, he's snuck back up in the live rankings to 6th. If you look at live, as of this week's official rankings, he was sitting at 7th. So, dropped down. He was in the top 4, as we know, when it came to the seedings for the French Open. He needs to work on that if he wants to make sure he's in that, top billing when it comes back to the US Open.
And Fritz is another one that is probably looking at the Sinner Alcaraz game and thinking, like, has my window closed, right? Remember, he made the final of the US Open last year, got beaten convincingly to Sinner in straight sets. And we know Clay, he always struggles on that surface, right? The results just haven't been there, especially at Roland Garros. Even at Wimbledon and on the grass, I mean, he hasn't really gotten his best results. He's more of a hardcore player, right? And he's very lucky that most of the year it is hardcore tournaments. Two of the Grand Slams are hardcore. So he'll sort of, tip his hat on that, and hopefully he can sort of bounce back and regroup. But Wimbledon, he needs to pick up some points if he's to really make a charge back into that top 4 position, which I think he's capable of doing. Albeit, though, Tommy Paul, I think, is the number 1 American who can really rise and challenge Fritz for that number 1 American position. I think he's languishing he's inside the top 8. He's a career high, number 8, because of that run at Roland Garros. So I think he's got a bit more upside, actually, compared to Fritz, which is interesting. But we'll see how it all plays out anyway. But yeah, Fritz, like I said, got the potential, but Wimbledon's going to be a big factor to seeing if he can rise in the rankings again.
It certainly will be. A couple of others that have moved up. Obviously, Francis Tiafoe, we know about the move that he's made after his recent form at the French. Sneaks up into 13th place currently on the live rankings, I believe. And then, of course, we talk about Artifice. Despite his injury withdrawal, he's up to 15 in the world. He was 14 at the start of the week. But most notably, Alexei Popyrin is currently 20th in the live rankings, into the 20 at last.
Yeah, and he needs to really boost it, doesn't he? Because remember, he won Montreal, the Masters 1000 title last year in August. So you assume that 1,000 points are going to be wiped off, and a few more tournaments as well where he went deep from memory, including the US Open 4th round. So these sort of tournaments coming up during the grass especially are going to be important for him to try and maintain that position, because if he doesn't, you can probably see him sliding down maybe around the 50 mark or even outside of that if results don't go his way. So I guess that's the disadvantage of doing so well in a lot of tournaments, where you have to back it up 12 months later. Not to say that Popyrin doesn't have the potential to do so. We know he's got a new coach in his corner in Wayne Ferreira, who has previously coached Francis Tiafoe. He's got a lot of experience there, and you can see that Popyrin, he's getting a bit more out of his game now, especially on the clay, where yes, he resides in Monte Carlo. He plays a lot of tennis on his clay, so to see that result reach the 4th round wasn't really much of a surprise. Because like I said before, Tommy Paul has just been exceptional form, and he can play on all surfaces. So yeah, I'd love to see Alexei really take that next jump again, and potentially try and make a top 15 berth and work from there. But it is going to be difficult.
We'll watch and see how he develops over the next little bit. But again, great to have two Aussies in the top 20. I think we've got 10th and 20th respectively on the rankings as it stands currently. Let's cast our eye ahead. Way too early. We love a way too early prediction to whip. Let's look at the men's first, Christian, and in terms of how it shapes up. Is it a toss of the coin here in terms of the Alcaraz Sinner? We know both of them love the clay, but are you seeing someone else? Obviously, Novak and Jack Draper are going to be two names that people are going to throw around. Is there someone else who's sneaking up a dark horse? What do you like here in terms of the way too early? Who's a smoky? There's the obvious ones. Who's a smoky and who's your favourite?
Gee, you want me to make a prediction? Well, 1 month down, I can't even make a right prediction 24 hours before the French Open final. All right. Look, I think Djokovic can make it a final again. I think Wimbledon is time. He's been working towards this moment. I know, yes, the results haven't gone his way, especially post AO where he made the semis and retired through injury. He's exited the first round a few times, which is obviously unlike Djokovic. But I just think that win in Geneva, that title, that semi-final against Sinner, look, he lost in straight sets, but that tennis was high quality, right? I mean, any other player in the world, probably bar Carlos, he would have won that match, Novak. So I think for me, it's always been grass has been his best opportunity to get that 25th slam, and Djokovic will know deep down that this is probably his last hurrah, right, in terms of that. So expect Djokovic to really give it his all. We know when he's locked in, it's very, very difficult to break him down, that's for sure, including Sinner and Alcaraz. So I guess, depending where the draw sort of shapes up, like I'd probably have maybe a Sinner Djokovic final, just depending. Like Sinner and Djokovic could obviously play in the same half, and that could be a semi-final. So like I said, it's all dependent. But yeah, I'm going to go Djokovic to win it. I'll probably be wrong, but I'm just going to put my neck on the line. I'm just going to say Djokovic to win it. I've just got that gut feeling that he's just going to pull something out of nothing when people least expect it. So Djokovic for me on the men's side, and a dark horse, it's tough. Do you count Jack Draper as a dark horse? I mean, I don't think we're expecting him to win it all. Yeah, I don't really have anyone else, to be honest, because like I've said, Sinner and Alcaraz, that's really the two players who, besides that, there's such a big gap between the rest, isn't there?
There is. I'm going to throw one out there, and it's not obviously not to win it. I just have a feeling he's going to make a bit of a deep run, and that's Seb Quarter.
Okay. Interesting.
Maybe a quarterfinal, somewhere
Okay.
around a little bit above the very seeding and ranking set. So we'll have a look. I'm leaning Sinner to win it. I think we're going to see Sinner Alcaraz again. I think it's going to be a 4-setter, and I think Sinner will get it done. So pretty specific. Let's go to the women's really quickly before we wrap and let you get out of here. The grass suits arenas game. We know that Shorten's in probably his favourite realistically here against the likes of, your Coco Gauffs, your Iga Swiatek's. Rebecca Andreeva might be in the picture as well.
Potentially. I mean, I was looking before the other day, and Sabalenka actually, she hasn't made it Wimbledon final. She's made 2 semis, which is pretty surprising given the other Grand Slam she's performed pretty well. So, I mean, yes, you'd think that grass should be one of her best surfaces, considering like her all-court game and the power, coming off the grass. But yeah, at the same time, the results just haven't shown it, and that could be for a multitude of factors and reasons. So, look, I'm going to stick with Sabalenka to win this one. I wouldn't be surprised if Coco probably takes this one as well, to be honest, just considering the field that's left, right? I mean, Rybakina, if she was in top 4, I'd definitely have her up there as definitely a big favourite, considering she's been there, done that. She won it 3 years ago. That's where she sort of broke through, to really establish herself as one of these top players. But just the inconsistency of the coaching situation with Stefan Vukov with the abuse allegations, she's just been a bit of in and out at the moment. So, yeah, I'd probably lean towards Sabalenka to win it.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I'm going to go. I'm actually going to go Mira Andreeva to break through here. I think the grass could set up well for her. She has a reasonable run. And then my dark horse, and I know you haven't thrown yours in yet, but the pattern so far, we've had 2 Czechs win it back-to-back since Rebecca. So I'm going to throw a Czech dark horse in, and I'm going to go Karolina Mukova to actually get things together and make a deep run to maybe the semi-finals here.
Ooh, not too bad. Yeah, I don't mind that. I'm going to go, I'm just going to throw one out here. I'm going to go Diana Schneider for a deep run. I don't know how far she's going to go, but I'm just putting that out there as a dark horse. I just think she's one of those names who, in one of these future slams, she's going to really break through, because just get a chance to watch her. For anyone listening, she is just phenomenal from the back of the court. So explosive. She just needs to brush up a few errors in her game, and she'll be up there amongst one of the best, mark my words. So potentially Wimbledon might be a breakout for her in terms of, maybe a semi-final run, maybe a final, who knows? I mean, you saw Jasmine Paolini 12 months ago. No one expected her to make the final of Wimbledon. So, yeah, in the women's game, there are openings, aren't there? I mean, Louis Busson, you just have to look, only a couple of weeks ago. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Could be interesting. Imagine that, Diana Schneider up against her long-term, or relatively long-term doubles partner, Mira Andreeva, in a semi-final. It'll be a great story. We'll wait and see. I don't think she's only made the fourth round of a Grand Slam once at the US last year, and a couple of third round out of that. So she's certainly on the improve and going better. I think she's got maybe about a 70%, just shy of 70% win record on grass at Wimbledon. So we'll wait and see. But Christian, of course, if people want to keep up to date of everything that's in the lead up, all the wonderful tournament, the other things that are happening around the tennis sphere, they can catch your work on the First Serve. They can also tune into the First Serve radio show as well. There's plenty of tennis coming their way.
Thanks, Chris. That's for sure. And definitely be keen to look back in our predictions post Wimbledon and see that we were all wrong.
We're on the bounce from the red clay to the red Sharon, and we bring back the AFL guru, the man who, some reason, continues to hang a Fremantle Dockers jersey behind him. Brody Burrows from the Third Man Up podcast. You've covered Spider with your head and left the Fremantle jersey hanging in pride.
Mate, it's not often we can say we've gone 3 weeks in a row without losing a game. But look, we've actually won 2 and 1 was a bye, but we'll take it.
Look, North Melbourne's, climbed it to the lofty position of 16th. I'm still very confused as to what's happening. But anyway, we'll wait and see. I don't think we're going to get too much higher. But, Bros, we thought this week, while we get you on, we might do a bit of a punchier recap. And let's do a bit of buy, hold, sell. We've done this with some other elements. We did it with the F1 the other week. Pretty simple concept, right? If the stocks are good and you think they're going to keep rising, we buy because we want to invest when they're low. If they're just, ticking along where they should be, a bit of a hold. And if they're set for a downward spiral or they're just, something you wouldn't touch with, a 10-foot pole, well, then we sell and get out of there like we do. So we're going to do this in a bit of reverse ladder order. We're not going to go through all the teams at this point, but we just want to get the highlights, talk to us about why it's a buy, why it's a hold, why it's a sell, and what you're going to go from there. So let's start it off with one. I think this one should be pretty easy. Your club's rivals, the West Coast Eagles.
I'm holding West Coast right now. You look at their development this year. I think that as a list, I think they are just, they're as bad as Richmond at the moment. And what West Coast are doing this year, they're playing their kids at least. I think that's been the main criticism over the last few years is they haven't been getting enough games into their kids and really stalling their rebuild. I think they're getting games into kids right now. I think that they'll be a big watch over the next few years and see what happens with a few of their stars who they're going to put on the trade table.
Yeah, to be fair, they probably could have won on the weekend if they kicked a little straighter. So, then that tells you they're not that far away. That's just a bit of nerves and youth. And they weren't taking on any world beaters in that regard, but it certainly was an opportunity for them and it shows some promise. We're going to skip over the next two in Richmond and North Melbourne. Let's talk Port Adelaide.
Port Adelaide, believe it or not, I'm holding, which is a bit of an odd one, but I think that was a big win for them over GWS on the weekend away from home. And look, so much talk around Ken Hinkley, Josh Carr, what's going to happen there. And until Port Adelaide are out of finals, Ken Hinkley is going to keep coaching. And if there's anything that we know is when Ken Hinkley's job is on the line, Port come out and suddenly turn into a top 4 team. And if every week Ken Hinkley's job on the line, who knows what kind of a run Port Adelaide can go on. And I think we've really seen the rise of Miles Bergman. I think he's just adding an extra 0 to his contract at the moment with his form. And I think they're a hold as well. So I think they could rise a few spots and really I don't think they'll make finals, but I think they'll definitely change the face of the 8 on the run home.
Well, now let's talk about a team that was certainly, I think they're in a lot of people's calculations last year around buying at different points, but where they sit now, the Sydney Swans under a new coach in 2025.
I'm selling. I'm absolutely selling on the Sydney Swans. Look at them right now. They cannot kick a goal. They've got no one ahead of the football, and so often you see Isaac Keaney would get the ball in the centre, he'll chip it to Chad Warner, and then they'll wait for Isaac Keaney to run all the way to the forward pocket and kick it to him in a one-on-one. And look, they don't have enough avenues to go. Joel Marty, he can't get on the park. They need to invest big. I know there's talk of Jamari Eagle-Hagan, but I don't even think he'll solve their goal-kicking issues next year.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a challenge for them. It's hard to see where they turn it around and get things squared away. Let's keep on moving up that ladder and let's go a couple of spots up to 11th in the Carlton Blues.
I'm selling as well here. Carlton, they should have absolutely put that Essendon side to the sword on the weekend. Essendon decimated by injuries. Carlton fresh as, but still they just look, yes, they got to win, but for me, they are so far off where they should be as a list and as a team. They look disconnected. Going inside forward 50, Charlie Curnow, Harry Mackay, you should be getting at least 5 or 6 goals from these guys each week, and they just look a little bit lost as a team right now. Adam Sard, we're not seeing any drive off half-back. So until they can find another running half-back flanker, I'm not buying in to Carlton whatsoever.
Yeah, I can completely understand that. Well, let's sneak into the top 8 in a team that you can probably wax lyrical for about an hour about. You touched on it. You know, they've beaten the Gold Coast. They've beaten Port Adelaide. They've beaten the GWS Giants, your Fremantle Dockers. Is it buy, and is this head or heart?
Well, outside, I've actually done a little bit of research. So the next 4 games of Fremantle, North Melbourne, Essendon, St Kilda, Sydney, and then West Coast after, coming off 3 straight wins. So Fremantle have a real serious chance over the next 5 weeks to put themselves into not just top 8 calculations, but top 4. But as we've seen with Fremantle before, these are the games they win, and then they fall away at the end of the season. They are the youngest team in the AFL over the last 3 weeks, believe it or not, younger than West Coast, younger than Richmond. So look, as a long-term fan, I'm buying Fremantle right now, but come round 18 when they're sitting top 4, I'm selling them while they're higher.
Well, I was going to say, if they can win those 5 games in a row, those 5 you just talked about, that'd sit them at 12-5, and 12 wins. We know basically, you shouldn't miss finals from there. 13 will lock you in, so it's a chance for them here to really make or break, as you say.
Yeah, absolutely. But as we've seen with Fremantle all year, they'll win games they shouldn't, and they'll definitely lose games they shouldn't. So who knows? It's like trying to follow the New York Knicks or Tottenham Hotspur.
Speaking of teams that like to find ways to lose games that they shouldn't, the GWS Giants.
Yeah, I'm selling. Absolutely selling from the weekend. The Orange Tsunami is more like an orange kiddie pool right now. Really bad loss, especially to Port Adelaide, who have been they've had their own troubles so far this year. They're just lacking the drive from the midfield, which we've seen them run in numbers. But look, every team's shutting that down. They're flooding the corridor against them. They're having to use the wings, and they just can't get that run and carry and drive. And look, Jesse Hogan on the weekend, not 1 mark. And I think it's been at least 3 years since Jesse Hogan has had a game with no marks. And without him kicking big scores, they look, like they can't score over 70 points.
I think one is to see whether they can kick on. It doesn't get any easier. I think they've got Brisbane next up, followed by the next team that we're going to talk about, which is the Gold Coast Suns. 2 losses in a row. Has the bubble finally burst for the Suns?
Holding on the Suns right now. I think they've had a couple of tough losses. This is usually the time that the Suns do fall away, and everyone's talking about them for a top 4 or top 8 chance, and they unfortunately disappoint us in the last half. But look, I think we're going to see a bit of a turnaround from the Suns over the next 4 or 5 games. They've got that mantra, the tap, 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 play dirty, get ugly this year, which we haven't seen from them in the past. I think they're going to grind out a win over the next 1 or 2 weeks and really flip their season back on track.
There. They need to turn it soon, though, as you say. Next up, let's go to the top tier of the table. Let's go up to 3rd on the ladder. The Adelaide Crows, they've built well at the moment. They had a win over Brisbane, a couple of easy wins, a tight loss to Collingwood. We've seen some positive signs from them. They won the showdown as well. This is as good an Adelaide team as we've seen in recent years.
Yeah, their trading over the last few years, yes, they've had a few draft misses, but their trading has been absolutely unreal. I mean, bringing Jordan Dawson in, making him captain in his 2nd year at the club, Alex Neil-Bullen, leadership member at Melbourne, and then just these role players, Peatling that they've brought in as well. Mitch Hinge is absolutely flourishing off the half-back flank. They're winning games at the moment that they shouldn't, and that's what good sides do. So often you see those teams that are kind of competing that 5th to 8th, they'll play a good game of footy and find a way to lose. Crows are now finding ways to win these close games. I think that's a sign of a good team. So I'm buying the Adelaide Crows.
Last but not least, they sit atop the ladder at the moment. Obviously, they're always one of the teams that people love to hate. Can Collingwood stock get any higher at this point?
Look, you can't buy them, can you? So I'm going to sell them because at the moment their stock is far too high, but they are such a good team. I love watching Collingwood play, believe it or not. They play such an exciting brand of football, and no longer they're relying on a great game from Nick Dacos. I mean, Josh Dacos is arguably, or not even arguably, I think he's had a better year than Nick, but it's the role players they're having through the midfield. I think Jack Crisp, really underrated year as well, and Jamie Elliott, All-Australian small forward. Darcy Cameron, one of the best ruckman in the AFL right now. I think he shared the points with Max Gawn on the weekend. And look, Collingwood Magpies, I'm holding I'm holding us. I'm going to hold Collingwood. I don't want to sell them just because they're probably, if they're not the $1.50 favourites, they should be, because they are just such a good team right now.
Crazy to think that we're at the midpoint of the season and they've already spent 4 more rounds in the top 8 than they did for all of last season. They massively underperformed. If you had bought them at the end of last season, I think you would have made a nice little trade out to sell now. But I think you're right. I think just hang around there and see what happens. They're probably a little overpriced, but I don't see them dropping crazily. So we'll wait and see. Broads, anything else we need to touch on in the AFL? Who's been impressing from an individual point of view? You've thrown some names there. You know, we got anyone that's a blue chip stock in terms of playing talent at the moment?
Jordan Dawson, jump on him. He's leading the Brownlow medal, I think, by at least a couple of votes. We saw him 3 quiet quarters and single-handedly in 5 minutes change the game for Adelaide after copying a hard tag. I think Bailey Smith is also in the top 3 for the Brownlow, and AFL would have to be in crisis mode. I mean, let's say Geelong are out of the finals and Bailey Smith wins the Brownlow. Think of the media for the next 24 hours. He's going to be coming straight from Revs in Melbourne, straight to do a media conference. I think that's going to be hilarious. They're going to have media everywhere. And look, I want to see a pissed Bailey Smith with the Brownlow medal, similar to Nat Fyfe in the bathtub a few years ago. I think that'll be brilliant. But I love what Bailey Smith has brought to Geelong, and I love the cheekiness that he's brought along with it too.
Yeah, let's see some more, players flashing it back to the 80s and 90s, 25 cans deep, having a great night, wandering out, just doing a live cross out the front, with their hair in tatters, their shirt hanging off their shoulder and just living their best life. As long as they're not hurting anyone and they're having a good time, Broads.
Exactly right. Well, there was one crisis meeting with Bailey Smith and Andrew Dillon during the week, so maybe they're just getting in early and saying, Chris Scott, you're going to have to tag along with him everywhere he goes on Brownlow night.
The joys of being a babysitter. Someone will love that role. But as always, Broads, we love you coming in, giving that punchy snapshot of the AFL world and, of course, helping us out with Around the Grounds. And we look forward to chatting some more sport with you in the coming weeks.
Sounds good, boys. Look forward to talking then.
It's been another big episode of the Chris McPherson Show. A big thank you to you all for tuning in and sticking with us this long. Of course, make sure you stay tuned to our YouTube channel and our Spotify for our daily doses dropping throughout the sporting calendar as different things are happening. I have some snippets of the World Test Championship in the coming week, as well as plenty more as we head towards Wimbledon and a few others. I have our weekly episodes as well. And of course, you can keep up with our social media channels. You can see us on X or Twitter, if you will, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Just search The Chris Mack Show. Make sure to give us a follow, a like, a subscribe, whatever is relevant to each of the platforms, and drop us a note, slip us a little comment or a message and let us know what you're thinking and what you'd like to see. A big thank you to our guests panelists this week. We had Lachie Avil from Round Ball Australia, Christian Montegan from The First Serve, Brody Burrows from the Third Man Up, and of course, the magician behind the ones and the twos, the man in maroon, J.R. Carter, our resident Queenslander. A big thanks to all of them for coming on, and check out their content as well. We love being able to promote those guys and what they're doing on our show. But a big thank you to you again. A big thank you to everyone tuning in, and we look forward to bringing you more content, the black and white of your sporting landscape. No grey opinions here on the Chris McPherson Show again next week.